It's time to check in on our New Year's resolutions, Blake.
Toby, do I look like a man that writes resolutions?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man whose most important New Year's resolution is to bet the NFL ponies better this year so I can get my wife that Nolensville dream house. And I'm here with my co-host who has already completed 78 of his 22 resolutions, Toby Walters.
70 out of 22. That's good math.
I don't know how you do it, but you do it, you know?
See, you very much look like a guy who writes resolutions. You just look like a guy who doesn't complete resolutions.
Well, I submit them to my boss, but he doesn't follow up with me. And so then I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah. And what did you just say before we started recording when you were trying to put your in-ears in, that you were dislocating your shoulder?
Well, when I was trying to how do people do this? How do you feed your in-ears from the back of your shirt up without it feeling like your shoulder's about to pop out?
I said start doing yoga, Blake.
And I said that might kill me.
I think a little bit of yoga. I think that should be your next New Year's resolution. I want to ask your wife how confident she feels in her chances of getting a Nolensville house if it's based upon your NFL betting skills.
Did you know that my life insurance just got up, Toby? I think her bet on us getting that Nolensville house is I'm just going to die.
That's a much more likely bet than your NFL betting skills.
I mean, I only have two. I have two life insurance policies. She has one, so it's getting suspicious.
Yeah. Now, what if for 64 audio, what if you were able to invent some sort of whatever, snaking up the back of your shirt and then inserting in your ears? Like if you could invent some sort of robotic thing that does that for you?
Then we could sell that at churchgear.com.
Yes, that'd be amazing. All right, Blake, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. So I did kind of do one this year. And you know this about me. I've been struggling with migraine headaches for, 7-8 years.
Yeah, and you've been blaming them on me, but I didn't know you 8 years ago.
It was close.
I knew you 7 years ago.
It was real close, Blake. So I like to say that you're the source of my headaches. So I did a New Year's resolution. It was an elimination diet. And the first thing I was trying to eliminate was you. But here we are.
Yep.
Yeah. Here we are back on this podcast, unfortunately.
You're contractually obligated.
So, I did this weird thing where they test your blood for any sensitivities you have. And we all have sensitivities. I don't have anything like I'm allergic to, not allergic to anything, but I'm sensitive to random things like lemon and chicken, gluten. We're all kind of sensitive to gluten these days, I think.
Your report came back as Big Wuss.
Big Wuss is yes.
I'm going to start calling you down the podcast.
My new handle.
Big Wuss.
So elimination diet. And then I learned that apparently people who suffer with migraines are often low in sodium.
Oh, you just got permission to eat so much chips and salsa?
So the problem is the sodium in chips and salsa, like table salt, basically, that's terrible for our bodies.
But you needed sodium, I thought.
So healthy sodium, and I can't tell you the difference. I'm not a doctor, but there is a difference between table salt and then
You're not a doctor? Why you been giving me all these medications for years?
It's really helped. I'm on day 5 without a migraine right now, and that's pretty wild.
Just from the sodium.
Well, between the elimination diet and the sodium, I've seen a huge, increase in days without headaches.
And I'm just so curious here. So you just cut out chicken, lemon, and then took sodium?
No, a ton of stuff. I stopped drinking soda. I don't do gluten anymore. There's been a lot of stuff that I've eliminated since the beginning of the year.
What do you miss the most?
It kind of depends on the meal. I'll have a burger with a gluten-free bun. And so I'll miss bread in that time, but then I won't miss bread other times if I'm just not eating bread,
Do you still have the will to live, or are you just trying to get your life insurance policy to time in?
So last night I had pizza. Now let me get to the terrible part about it, but pizza for the first time in 2 or 3 months. And I was like, hallelujah, I'm having pizza, but it was cauliflower crust. It's not terrible.
I was about to say, some of them are actually pretty dang good, and the calorie reduction is amazing.
I know.
There's some California pizza kitchens, barbecue chicken bacon. Oh my gosh. You could eat a whole pizza for under 700 calories. They stopped making them.
That's very unfortunate. So, I'm hoping that, you have cauliflower crust to replace your pizza habit. I'm wondering what there is to replace my Blake habit.
Well, I don't know if you can be prescribed nonsense, but hey, maybe we could find that in the drug aisle at Kroger, get you a discount.
I mean, probably any one of the middle school boys in your small group at youth group, they would have the same maturity level. So we could just slot one of them into the podcast co-host seat.
Real talk, we had 2 kids from CPA or 3 kids from CPA show up last night, which is like a really nice private school in the area. And they would not qualify for this. They were very mature, very smart. It was the best group I've had with these boys in 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, y'all are so smart. You are almost as smart. They never will be, but they're almost as smart as the production manager for Grove Community Church in Riverside, or what her kids call her, the booth troll, Christina Pendleton. Welcome to the pod, Christina.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Christina, give us a little more context on why your kids call you the booth troll.
I am the booth troll because I oversee lighting and visual production cameras at our church. And so I've done that for 17 years. And I can be very detailed and not always the most pleasant person to work with.
that sounds
like
a lot like me. Do people have to pay a fee or a toll to get into the booth?
No, but you do have to answer 3 riddles.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I assume you're joking, but in case you're not, do you happen to have one of these riddles handy?
You'll have to come visit us and find out.
Oh, there we go.
That's it. That's called a tease.
And are your kids allowed in the booth?
They are, because they have been well trained.
Okay.
They've answered the riddles, Toby.
Yeah. I do remember Todd Elliott talking about like his son when he was younger always wanted to come in the booth when he worked at Willow Creek, but it would depend on if the lead pastor was there or not, because the lead pastor had, was kind of a little more stringent with like no kids around the equipment. So
are you sure Todd was okay with you saying this?
He told this story on the podcast, I think.
I wasn't listening.
Of course you weren't, Blake.
I was in a pizza coma. I had to eat all the pizza you've been leaving out.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, let's pivot from the pizza to some 5 Truths and a Lie, our weekly game where we try to get to know our guest and guess what their lie is, and they see if they can try to fool me and Toby, which isn't that hard. Number 1. In elementary school, I founded my school's Mariah Carey fan club.
So did you, Blake.
See, but we could only meet during Christmas.
Yeah. Blake, I'm surprised that you know who Mariah Carey is.
Well, 1, she's the saint of Christmas, and 2, Nick Cannon and her had some fun
That's
drama.
how you know Mariah Carey is through Nick Cannon.
Yes.
Yes.
The internet is a dark place, kids. Stay off. Number 2, I played clarinet and was a band kid for 9 years.
I know. She looks a little too hip to be a band kid, but...
No, band kids have gotten hip nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm trying to guess if she's I think she's trying to throw us off. I bet it's a different instrument. Number 3, I have appeared in 4 nationally televised parades. I bet. What if she did the Macy's Day Parade in the band?
That could be true. With a clarinet or some other instrument. Yep.
Number 4, I studied art history in college.
Which is why she's in production now.
And she's wearing a scarf.
That's true. I can
Scarf
see that.
people are artistic.
Yeah.
Number 5, I saw you. Oh my gosh. I saw U2 and Taylor Swift in concert in the same week.
That's like my dream.
That's like our combined dream.
Yeah. Now, Blake, who's the lead singer of U2?
Bono?
Oh.
Does that mean I get Taylor Swift tickets as my bonus this year?
No, because you said it with a question mark, but you're growing. You're growing.
Dang it. Number 6, I was in the audience when James Gordon and Tom Cruise made an appearance in The Lion King in L.A.
Huh.
Dang, that's cool. I'm going to lock in on number 2. I bet she was in the band, but she didn't play clarinet. I think she's throwing us some curveball and she wasn't a clarinetist.
Okay. I'm going to go with the art history major. I'm going to say that like a lot of our production community, myself included, she didn't actually do college. She just went straight into production.
That would make sense for how young she looks.
Yeah.
All right, Christina, what's your lie?
My lie is that I've appeared in 4 nationally televised parades. It's only 3.
Blake, you and I are not scoring well lately, are we?
Are you telling me a woman outsmarted us? I'm so surprised. Christina, tell us what the 3 nationally televised parades were.
I made 2 appearances in the Hollywood Christmas Parade and once in the Rose Parade.
I was going to ask about the Rose Bowl, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
And we assume you were in
not
the
as
band?
exciting as you think it might be.
Were you in the band or were you dressed up as some character?
I was in the band. Marched with the Riverside Community College Tigers, playing clarinet.
Blake, if you were going to be in the band, what instrument would you play?
Well, I was in the band for a year and a half, and I played French horn. Here's how terrible that logic was. I looked at the wall of instruments, and I went, that one looks the hardest and craziest. I'll pick that. I was terrible.
Well, I think it is the hardest and craziest. Isn't that one of the hardest instruments to play, Christina?
I think so. It all depends on there's too many things that factor into it.
Yeah.
I picked instruments like I pick cocktails on a menu. I go, what's the weirdest thing here? And it's only a 15% success rate.
Yeah. So how did your parents feel about the art history major? And are you using that in your production role at all?
Well, I come from a half Asian family, so the fact that I didn't become a doctor or a lawyer or the president was very hard for my mom.
Has she still recovered yet?
No. She's come around since I do it for the church now, but she's still kind of like, maybe you should have been a nurse.
Yep.
Oh, listen, Christina, my wife was a nurse. She's now a nursing professor. She'd be mad if she heard me say that. It's a very hard job being a nurse.
Yeah.
So you did a good decision.
Yeah, I think I chose the right thing.
Like our buddy Alec Takahashi.
If you're going to be stressed, be stressed for the Lord.
Yes. She should write marketing copy for us.
She should. There you go. Yeah, our buddy Alec Takahashi has said his parents are still a bit disappointed that he's one of the most famous lighting directors in the world. Poor guy.
My parents must be the inverse of what Asian parents are. Because my parents were like, Blake, you're doing great. Like every day.
They had zero expectations
but
for
then
you.
Alec Takahashi can't get an attaboy. It's ridiculous. Okay, who was better, Taylor Swift or U2 when you saw them in concert the same week?
And what tours were these?
U2, I can't remember what the tour was called, but it was like the most recent one.
Okay.
It wasn't that good
Taylor
compared
Swift.
to Taylor Swift.
Shut up.
Taylor Swift, it was Reputation at the Rose Bowl. And it was as good as Taylor Swift was, U2 was better.
I'm telling you, Blake, U2 is one of the greatest live acts of all time, if not the. Like, they have it dialed in.
Christina, I really thought you were so great until this moment. You put a dagger in my heart, but it's okay.
But I could never get tickets to the Eras tour. So I think there's still just like this thing in my heart that is just sad for Taylor Swift because I didn't get to see the big show.
Now, did you watch it on Disney Plus or in the theaters?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I have teenage girls, so it's on every other day at our house.
Yeah. See, I was gifted 2 tickets by like our corporate card because I own the company, and it's the best benefit I've ever gotten here at Church Gear. And
as opposed to being on this podcast with me, Toby?
You're on this podcast with me, Blake.
Okay,
and so,
a host.
I told my wife, hey, I've got 2 tickets. And her response was not, do you want to take I think Molly was 14 at the time. Do you want to take our teenage daughter? Her response was, are you going to take Blake?
As you should have. I would have died here, working here, if you'd have taken me. But no. You took your wife instead.
I know. Do you think I want you to end up dying here, working here? Or do you think I want to upgrade our marketing brand director at some point?
I didn't say it had to be at the end of my life. If
Christina,
I died working here, it'd be a great story for you.
Christina, you want to come here to Church Gear and we'll send Blake out to the Grove and we'll see who succeeds better, Blake.
Oh, that's not a question. Okay, but before we package me up and ship me out, tell me about seeing Tom Cruise and James Gordon, because Tom Cruise, I just love watching that man run.
It was wild. So we're sitting in the audience and pre-show, we start noticing there's broadcast cameras all around the theater. And I'm like, that's weird. Why are those here? And the very opening of the show is Circle of Life, and all of the animals come in from the back of the room and work their way towards the stage. And we see this, I think it was a rhinoceros, come by, and it's a 2-man suit. And I'm like, why does that look like James Corden in there? That's weird. And they get on stage and we're staring at it, trying to figure it out. And I'm like, I sincerely think it's James Corden. And my family's like, you are nuts. And at the end of the show, they come out and they're actually recording a little segment for James's like last show. And so it aired on their show and we were in the audience. And Tom Cruise came out as Pumbaa or something like that. It was wild.
Did he come out sprinting? Because if he's not running, I don't think he can contractually be in the public view.
Now, Blake, did you realize that you kept saying James Gordon? And I was like, I felt bad because I'm like, who's James Gordon? But it's James Corden.
I got to tell you, when I saw Tom Cruise, I was so excited. I did not care about the other name.
Do you know who James Corden is?
He's like a funny guy.
Yeah, late night TV show host.
See, my generation doesn't do late night. You know, we get on Instagram Reels and then we go to sleep.
Christina, this is what I have to deal with on a daily basis. It's like having another teenage daughter at work.
Oh, I'll take that.
But also, if you're on Instagram Reels, like James Corden has Reels the next day of the late night show. So you should be up to speed.
Guys, all my Reels are just green chartreuse content at this point. Don't Google that. Okay.
And I also want to ask, so is Tom Cruise the best running actor out there? because I think it's Will Smith. Have you seen that guy run?
See, but that's not Will Smith's like signature thing. People know Tom Cruise for running. People know Will Smith for just being hilarious.
So I read Will Smith's biography, and he talked about running in Bad Boys. And so Michael Bay, the director, wanted to have this big dramatic scene with him running. So he knew that some actors look really good running and some do not. And so he hired the Olympic coach of Carl Lewis to teach him how to run like Carl Lewis.
Did he succeed?
Brilliantly. If you go back and watch Bad Boys, the first one, and you see him running away from an explosion, it looks amazing.
I did watch Bad Boys, but it's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
My old boss at my other job really wanted me to watch it. So you know what I did? I watched it.
It's what you do.
All right, Christina. But that was just in the background of my life, leading up to this moment. So tell us some of the stuff in your background that's led you up to this moment today in your role in production.
Some of my background. I studied art history in college. I worked as a photographer and was looking for a way out of that so I could have weekends free. And
church production.
So my good friend was the worship pastor at our church, and he offered me a job. Well, I had to interview, and then he offered me a job. And I started as his administrative assistant, and he was like, yeah, you need more to do. And so he just started throwing things at me, and I became the producer for Weekend Services. And then I became a lighting girl, and then I became a video director, and I just keep adapting to whatever we need.
That's awesome. Do you feel like I feel like there are people in the production community that are the gearheads, and then people that, veer more towards the creative side, and they end up leading a lot of people. Which camp do you fall more into? Or are you kind of a little bit in both?
Or is there a third camp we didn't even think of?
I am the third camp where you just kind of accidentally fell into the job and you only know the gear that you own. You don't know anything else.
I love that.
So I'm definitely the people creative side.
Do you feel like your art history degree comes into play at all in what you do in production now?
I think a little bit, because in art history, you can kind of see in the early church how different artists honored the Lord by telling the stories through their paintings. And it was their act of worship. So it's inspired me to make this my act of worship.
Yeah.
I actually think her art history degree is really pertinent for her job, because I went to the Biltmore over at Christmas, and this was 2 Christmases ago, and they were showing these beautiful tapestries that like different Christian painters had made throughout the years. And I was like, oh yeah, Christians show the secular society beautiful art to draw people to Jesus. Our modernization of that is production.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting into dangerous territory, but I would say that Christians used to show the world, who Jesus is through great art. And then we just sort of shrank back a bit in our creative.
You looking for a sandbox?
I am. But Christina, do you feel like, we go and we see you too, and we see Taylor in these amazing concerts. Do you feel like now Christians are behind the times with the creation of art and just the beauty that we do through that?
I think it's okay that we're behind, because we're not meant to be what they are. They're just there to entertain. Yeah. And so it's almost like they need to be bigger and better. But I think within the church, you can keep it simpler because it's a simple story you're telling.
Yeah, I like that.
Toby, we're called to be set apart. We're not called to be Taylor Swift.
Is Taylor Swift not set apart? You said she's the greatest artist of all time, Blake.
Yeah, I stand by it.
I agree.
Okay, so let's talk some more about production community's impact. Toby, you're better at asking these questions, so I'm going to segue it over to you.
Thank you. I caught it, Blake. I caught the ball you tossed over my way. So, Christina, we rarely get to talk to ladies in the production community, so this is super fun for us. How important has the community at large been for you? And when did you first get involved in the greater production community, and how have you found kind of connection through that?
Yeah, for me, it has really changed, I think, my trajectory in this ministry, because I had spent 10 years doing this without really knowing other women that did it. And I didn't think much of the fact that I was a woman doing it. If anything, I felt like it was hard because I was younger than all my volunteers, and I was trying to lead older volunteers that were old enough to be my parents. But once I found Philo helped me connect with other women that do this. I joined their cohort, and I think we realized collectively that when you're the only woman in a space, it's more isolating. You have a little bit more limited opportunities of who to learn from, because there's always that weird balance of guys and girls spending time together and, the weirdness there. It shouldn't have to be weird, but sometimes it is. And so being able to find women that do what we do and we can answer each other's questions without, no offense, but like getting mansplained is really great.
What does it feel like when we're getting dangerous territory? Because I don't know. I'm a dude.
I know.
And I don't know enough to ever mansplain to someone else because I'm not smart enough. So what does it feel like to be mansplained? Like, how are you? Is that a moment in production where you're like, yes, this is what's happening to me?
For the most part, my team is really good about not mansplaining to me because they know I'll call them on it. But they also are people who want everyone to grow in their knowledge. And so I've been incredibly blessed to be surrounded by that kind of group. But other women, I know that that's been their reality with their teams and with other techs. And it's exhausting because sometimes you feel like you're constantly having to prove that you know what you know, whereas other people aren't doing that. They just assume that they know it.
Yeah. Do you feel like, somebody at the Grove wants to volunteer as part of production and they're told, oh yeah, here's Christina, she's in charge. Do you see this moment of surprise on their face? Like, oh, okay.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So my husband also volunteers with us, and he's very good at pushing the few buttons that he's been instructed to push. But he can't do what I can do because he's not paid to do it. He doesn't need to know that.
Yeah.
But he also sits at our lighting console, which is the first thing inside our booth. So people come up after services and they're like, hey, how do I join the team? And like, can you teach me how to do this stuff? And he's like, well, I can't, but she can.
Yeah.
And they're always a little surprised.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Willow Hodge, but friend of ours as well. And in talking with her, she was very intimidated first coming on with her team. She was, if not the only woman, one of the only women on their production team at Hope Fellowship. But as people got to know her, then it went from like one or two women on the team to about 50-50. And so I don't know if you've seen this. It seems, pretty like to be expected that if there's men running the team, then they're only going to draw other men. Like women might feel intimidated to want to join that team. But if there's a woman leading the team, then it's kind of like men and women would be drawn to want to be part of that. Have you seen like kind of a more healthy balance between having both on your team there?
Yeah, I think we have. We've seen that growth too, where when we first started, we only had women ever serving just on Pro Presenter. Now we have women that serve in every role. And I think it does help balance it out too. And I think it's cool just to see it really is like the whole church and all the talents coming together.
Yeah. Blake, you are one of the honorary ladies here at Church Gear.
I am a Church Gear lady.
Yeah. And you're the only man, and I'm using air quotes if our listeners can't see me doing that, but you're the only man who has been invited to join the ladies club here at Church Gear.
Yes, I have. We every now and then we'll do like theme mugs. We talk about like little like Gilmore Girls, fun stuff.
Is it based on
Gilmore
your
Girls?
Yes. All right, Christina.
That was almost one of my like 5 truths and a lie.
The dagger is out of my heart for the Taylor Swift being not as good as you two. What would that have been for your 5 truths or a lie though?
I don't know.
Okay.
Something about I don't know. I went to a filming or something.
Gotcha.
So I was an extra in Gilmore Girls.
You would have loved that, Blake.
I would have.
So do you think your honorary lady status is your love of Taylor Swift, your love of Gilmore Girls, and your love of like holiday drinks at Starbucks?
I think it's really just something that stems from the fact that I love production, and apparently production is ruled by the women now. So
it should be.
I'm still in the club.
Christina, do you and some of the other ladies in production, like in the greater community, have you been able to build any sort of like specific connection, text group? Are you guys able to support each other, across different churches?
Yeah, we have. So I lead a mentor circle with Thought Leader Connect. Mm-hmm. So we have about 15 women that meet in that group every 2 weeks. But outside of that, we have a text thread that we are in almost every single day. Either just asking questions about what we're doing or just praying through what each other's going through in life. And we have an Instagram group chat too, just to send those funny reels.
You really can tell who you love in life based upon your group chats and how active they are.
Yeah.
Christina, I would love to just ask you to pitch the community if they're listening right now, guy or girl, regardless. But like, I think that being in community can feel awkward at first. You know, we just had a guy join our men's table, and it's always, you feel weird the first week, but it gets good after the awkward. So if you were to pitch someone on like finding their production community and the importance of it, like what would you say to that person to finally make that first move?
I think it's kind of like going on a first date. It's just awkward. You just have to embrace the awkwardness and know that 5 years down the road, if these are your people, they're completely your people wholeheartedly, and they're going to be in your court behind you and everything you go through. And finding that community is really what God wants for each of us.
Christina, can you give some of our listeners, I'm sure there are a lot of production directors at churches where their team is all guys, but they would love for some women to join their team. They just don't know really how to recruit the ladies. Do you have any just good advice to break down those barriers so they can, get some women to want to join their team?
Personal invites. Find women. If you don't know women, you just need to get out and talk to people.
Touch grass.
Like even if it's your wife, like just bringing her into the booth and or having some friends join the team, and then it'll just keep growing from there. They just need to see themselves represented in that space to know that there is space for them.
Yeah. I heard one church, I think it was at Fellowship Church, Alexa Ross was telling me they have extroverts on their team just to recruit people. And so I'm thinking a lot of these production people, they are married to extroverted women. And just to invite them, would you be our token extrovert to just have conversations and invite people into the booth? And that really breaks down barriers, I think, when you have a friendly woman just available to answer questions and start conversations. I think that'd be just a really good life hack for production teams out there.
And I'm going to shift from calling them token to the production ambassador.
There you go.
They're the ambassador to reach out to everybody.
You're an extrovert. Do you not like being a token, Blake? Is that what it is?
I'm just saying token can have some weird connotation, but ambassador is always a good term.
Christina, when you are recruiting volunteers, what's sort of some of the first things you look for? Are you looking for technical skills, servant's heart, or do you like somebody that knows absolutely nothing because then you can teach them the way you want to?
She's looking for someone in a U2 shirt, Toby.
If they're already in a black shirt, they're already, they've gone that first step.
Yeah.
But at our men's ministry actually has this saying, and so I'm going to steal it from them. They want people that are fat. They want people who are.
I hope that's an acronym.
Christina,
this works.
You are so funny.
They want people who are faithful, available, and teachable. And so that's what I look for in volunteers too. I know in every season of life, there's only so much you can give, and sometimes you're just overwhelmed and there's not a lot. But you can be faithful with the bit of time that you do have. And sometimes you just have more time to give. So whatever that looks like for you and however you can be available to be of service, and then just being teachable in those moments as well. Because the worst thing is when you have a volunteer that thinks they know everything and you have to kind of lay down the hammer and help redirect that energy. It's challenging, but it's good because in the long run, hopefully they'll get to the place where they're serving confidently and in the right direction.
Blake, it doesn't surprise me at all that the men's ministry would adopt FAT as acronym. Like
that sounds like us.
Yeah. Christina, being out in Southern California, do you have a lot of people that have worked in the, perhaps the movie industry or the tech industry, and so they come in with kind of preconceived ideas of, I already know how to do this stuff?
We don't. I think because we're, about an hour and a half from LA, so we don't have a lot of traffic going this way. But we have a lot of older volunteers who have family members who work in LA, and they're like, "Oh, you should have my son come on." And I'm like, "Where is he?
Yeah,
bring him to church, sure." But no, we don't have a lot of Hollywood people.
Yeah, I can just see her now saying, "Oh, I'd love to have your son join the team. Is he fat?"
Oh my goodness. Do you ever actually say that? Do you say that as a hook to get people interested?
I actually only thought of it when you guys sent the questions over, and I was like, yeah, but that is what I look for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how Toby hires employees at church here too. You know, he started off with me.
Blake, you are very fat. That's why you're joining on this podcast.
That's what the doctor keeps telling me every year. And I said, give me some medicine, but apparently Ozempic is expensive.
Hey, New Year's resolutions, buddy.
To get Ozempic.
Christina, what's kind of your process of like day one, you want to start teaching your volunteers, is it more like, let's talk about the vision, why we do this? Is it, more technical? Let's talk about, what this camera does and how it's used in the service. Where do you get started with volunteers?
Yeah. I typically start with the vision as to why do we even do production? I think you have to understand the why before you understand how to do it well. So we start with the vision of being able to communicate this out so that the gospel can go forth and bring new people to the kingdom. Our church motto is that we're being changed by God to reach all people. So if you're joining our team, you're someone that's already been changed by God, and now you're ready to help be part of reaching all people.
Oh, so do
and
you
then
ever...
From there...
Sorry, keep going.
So then from there, we start getting into the technical. So we have them spend a weekend shadowing the booth, just looking at all the different roles and where they might want to serve. And then put them into a spot, start training.
Yeah.
You said, these are people who have already been saved by God, and so they're motivated to serve. Do you ever have anybody that just wants to hang out with the tech toys and they're actually not saved, or like just started coming to church and they want to join the volunteer team? Does that ever happen?
We've had, I think, just a handful of volunteers that I was a little questionable about. But part of our application process is sharing your testimony. So it's kind of good to see there is some background there, and we can see if they've made a decision to follow the Lord. And if they haven't, we can see this as a discipleship program too.
Okay, so then you'll still take them on the volunteer team?
Yeah, why not?
I think that's great. Missionary dating, did you ever hear about that, Toby? As a kid?
I know what you're talking about.
I don't think that was a good concept, but missionary volunteering, I think is great.
Yeah. So, Christina, I'm putting you a little on the spot because we didn't, talk about this ahead of time. But, I'm interested in kind of the different philosophies. I know I was a worship pastor for a long time, and there were some philosophies about whether we put people that don't have a relationship with Jesus up on stage. And we hired contract musicians sometimes to fill in that weren't necessarily Christian. And they wanted to be there, and they were great at what they did, and it was a wonderful experience. But then I know some pastors on staff didn't like that. They didn't think it was the right approach. But I know production team's a little bit different. But I'm curious about just your thoughts on that, of having, non-Christians serving if they want to serve, and they are honestly the fat acronym, but they're just not saved yet.
Yeah, I think with production, because you're not in charge of leading the congregation in worship, there's a little more flexibility in where they are in their walk with the Lord. And so for us, we do have that general guideline that you need to be saved to be on the platform leading worship. Mm-hmm. But for production, sometimes, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I still have moments where it's like that light bulb moment where the Lord's clearly speaking to you and calling you to do something different with your life. So I think that transformation can come just from being exposed over and over again. So that's always one of my prayers for people in the booth that are maybe newer in their walk. And I think too, sometimes they haven't received that clear enough question of, do you want to accept Jesus and follow him? And so the more they're exposed to that and realize that that is an important part of our faith, they just need opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm really liking this conversation because, of course, people on stage, that makes sense. You also probably don't want your youth volunteers, not Christian if they're leading a small group. Mm-hmm. But as you're saying, like, y'all are working backstage, you're working with the equipment, and you're working alongside other Christians. So I do love this to kind of maybe give some encouragement. If you're out there and you have people that are wanting to be on your production team and you're not sure, it's a great discipleship opportunity.
Yeah. Christina, there's... I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure there's some scientific evidence for this, but like a certain percentage of people are actually tone deaf. They can't sing on key. And so for the worship band and churches with choirs, like there are people that want to volunteer, but they can't because they're actually tone deaf. Do you ever experience somebody like that, like Blake?
I was just about to say, Toby, I told you to save that for therapy about your tone definition.
Do you ever have volunteers where, you try them on cameras, you try them on audio, try them on different things, and you discover like they're not good at any of them, like Blake?
They're just not good at anything.
And then are there like kind of non-technical things that then you can find for them to do?
Yeah. As soon as you started down that road, I knew exactly who I was going to talk about.
And is it your husband?
It's not my husband. My husband is very musical and he's wonderful as long as I set all the lighting cues right for him. So we had a volunteer a few years back who wanted to serve on lighting, but couldn't tell you the differences of the different pieces of the song. So he didn't know the difference between a verse, a chorus, a bridge, all of that. And so he's looking at the cue list and he's like, how do I know when to hit it? And I'm like, well, when it gets to the lyrics that are written in the comments, you push the button.
Yeah.
And he said, well, how do I know when it gets to those lyrics? I'm like, okay, they're on the screen right here, right in front of you, really big.
Yeah.
And 3 different screens. And
did you woman-splain it to him?
Oh yeah, what would that be called?
I felt like I was. I felt like I was trying to teach a 5-year-old how to figure it out, but he couldn't read. And it was such a train wreck. And so we spent 2 weekends trying to get it into some kind of rhythm for him, and it just was not connecting at all. So I asked him, what made you join the team? And he said, oh, I just wanted to meet people and, have people to talk to. And I'm like, have you heard of our greeting ministry? Because if you want to talk to people and make people feel welcome and say hi, this is a great spot for you. And so we kind of redirected his energy, and he's been a faithful greeter ever since.
Did y'all set that up like an NFL trade? Like you went to the greeting team and you're like, we hear you have an introvert. We would like to do a trade and a 3rd-round draft pick with this guy.
We should do that.
I love that he wanted to meet and talk to people. So let's sit behind the lighting board. Like, that's not where you talk to people.
That's the opposite approach.
I think he saw the headsets and was like, oh, they get to talk.
Oh, yeah.
All through the sermon.
That's funny. Christina, I wanted to ask, you've been at Grove for, did you say 17 years now?
17 years, yeah.
Can you give some advice to our listeners on how you've had such longevity in ministry at one church?
I think it just comes down to being adaptable. So there's an old kids movie called Robots that was Robin Williams as a robot. And one of the things they say in that movie is, if you see a need, fill a need. And so I think that's kind of the motto I've taken with me through my career. And I've just kept growing over the years, because when I see a need, I try to fill the need.
Yeah. I love that. Blake, that is kind of your motto. Like when you first started here at Church Gear, I was like, well, you're going to do a tiny bit of marketing, but also you need to do these 17 things every single day.
I was like, great, I'll do those 17 things and then we'll do marketing. And then he said, you're not good at marketing. I said, shut up, Toby. You said to see a need and fill it, and you need some nonsense in your life. Christina, in that scenario, Toby had to wait a long time for me to get good at something. How long do you wait or advise others to wait when their volunteers are, good-hearted and fat, but they're just not picking it up?
I usually give them 4 rotations. So like if I have a camera operator that's new, I put them on what I consider our easiest camera. And if they don't get it after 4 times with like some autonomy,
they go to the greeting ministry.
We start having some conversations about how they can improve. But usually by the second time, I know if someone's going to work out or not, and start coaching them towards what they can do to keep improving. And we don't have a lot of people not able to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a dark question. Do you ever have to fire a volunteer after that 4th rotation of it going bad? And if you do, what advice do you have? Because that sounds tough.
Yeah. So we had one guy he was just an older guy, wanted to serve because his wife was serving, but he couldn't hear. And so trying to give him directions on ClearComm when he literally can't hear it is just not going to work. And so we had to have that heart to heart of like, it's not that you can't do this position, but you are physically limited and I can't accommodate it. So I blamed the gear instead of him. So I said, it's our gear that just can't meet your needs. Mm-hmm. And so let's find another spot for you. And so he went on to just serve as like a stage manager, helping move props in and out when we needed.
Hey, he didn't get demoted to the greeting team. He got to stay with the production people. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's fun. Christina, we love to hear disaster stories here. The rumor is you have a really fun one to tell us. Can you tell us a little story about how something went horribly wrong?
I do have a little story. So we used to have this youth event that the 3 big churches in our city would run together. So it would rotate locations every year. And so we have hundreds of high school students waiting outside of our worship center, ready to come in. And we finish rehearsal and we just want to make one quick change. And so our creative pastor comes back to me. He's like, let me just tweak this one thing. And I'm like, okay, great. And he wants to go to the queue where the confetti cannons would be firing. And I said, okay, but hold on. We got to like park the confetti cannons so that they don't go off. Something went wrong. And he went to that queue and they all exploded. And filled the room with this glorious rainbow confetti, except there was no one in the room except like 4 of us.
Yeah. I bet it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It would have been more beautiful had it been at the right time. And if we had more confetti to stuff into the canyon for the next round.
Yeah.
But we had only bought enough because it was like youth ministry budget. So we only bought enough confetti for one firing. So we had to go collect all the confetti. And I'm just on the floor crying because I am overwhelmed and don't know what to do at this point. And at some point, our high school pastor collected his student ministry team, and we had all these high school students vacuuming, collecting confetti, and just shoving it back into the tubes. And we're just hoping that when we try to fire it again, it's going to work.
This is so youth ministry. I love it.
Yeah.
So how was it
just
the
one of those
second time?
examples where you see the church come together for one great cause.
I wonder how many like literal individual pieces of confetti there were. 50,000?
Oh, thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands for sure.
That's so fun. Was it just as beautiful the second time, or was it?
No.
No.
Not quite. But it was enough of the impact that we wanted, but definitely not as good as the first time.
Yeah.
So don't reuse confetti.
Well, and that's what people say about this podcast, Definitely good the first time, not as good as you wanted on the second.
That's right. It's so interesting as well. Like you think about production, about creating these moments, but like timing does matter. You fire your lighting cues, you have your mix right, but like if they're at the wrong time, all the magic is lost. It's an interesting
we had
reality.
another confetti cannon moment where we're in a Christmas rehearsal and it was supposed to fire at the very end of service, but instead it went off right at the end of Silent Night. So it's Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And then they went off and it's just not the same.
Yeah.
How did the congregation react to Sleep in Heavenly Peace and then a confetti cannon?
Well, that was in a rehearsal. So it was just like 100 people in the room.
Yeah. Blake, I'm going to start using a confetti cannon. It's like the gender reveal parties, but every year at your annual review, it's going to be, do you get a raise or a decrease? And so maybe it'd be like, shoot out green, the confetti cannon for a raise, or, maybe red for the decrease. Cause like you go in the red on the budget.
Yes. And then maybe you cut me like with a butter knife or something.
I'm going to shoot the confetti cannon just right in your face.
Christina, we had someone come on the podcast, Johnny from Worship Sound Guy, and he told a story about a confetti cannon where we still don't know if this kid is even alive. This kid was standing in front of the confetti cannon. They told him 4 times to move. He didn't move. So they shot that confetti cannon. He sent us the video. He just evaporates.
Yeah.
You didn't happen to catch any of this on video, did you? Because if so, we want to see it.
We for sure had a kid standing right in front of the confetti cannon. And so I grabbed some youth pastor that was standing in the booth and said, you need to go move them away from that in as quickly as possible.
Did they succeed?
But we still hit one kid in the back of his head. But it was just like this glorious sparkle around him.
Yeah.
It was good.
Did you get a video of this?
No.
Dang it.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for the next viral clip, What can I say?
It doesn't matter if it doesn't get caught on video, right, Blake? That's your generation.
Yeah, if something happens, it doesn't get caught on camera, it didn't happen. Just like a tree falls in the woods and nobody was there to hear the sound or get the clicks.
That's right.
Christina, what would also get some clicks, though, is a great tech takeaway. And I'm looking for one. So if you could give a unique piece of advice to the production community, what would be yours?
It may not be the most meaningful piece of advice, but if your ClearCom headset is connected to your camera tripod, make sure you take your headphones off before you walk away, especially if the camera is on air when you walk away.
Ooh.
Oh, no. Do you have a story behind that? That something bad happened?
That's exactly what happened. There was an emergency and I needed to walk away, but the video switcher had cut to my camera and I took the camera with me.
Oof. In the middle of service?
In the middle of service. I have a video of that.
Will you send that? Also, is this like the camera falls on the ground and shatters?
Oh, yeah. It didn't shatter, but it definitely got dragged behind me a bit and they cut away quickly enough, but you definitely know something happened.
Yeah. Did that camera live or was it?
Yeah, she was
retired?
good.
Okay. Yeah.
She was a tough old gal.
Yep.
That
that's
camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll have to send that to us. Well, Christina, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Is there anywhere you'd like to point people towards? Maybe your Instagram, maybe your church's Instagram. Some people say, nope, I'm good. I'm in tech. Leave me alone. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I guess if you just want to connect, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Christina, 2 hashtags, or not hashtags. What are those
underscores?
underscores,
Yeah.
2 underscores Pendleton.
You had
You
my
can find
brain
it. It'll probably
glitching.
be in the show notes or something.
Yeah,
My brain was glitching. I was like, can you do that in a username? She got me.
I know.
She got me. Well, Christina, thank you for joining us. Me and my fat co-host have to get out of here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
So, Blake, it was the whole idea of, see a need, fill a need. So when I first met you, I was like, oh, dear Lord, this boy needs some help. So that's kind of been my goal for the last 6-7 years, is to help you, but it's not working.
Well, and I know you love Fat Boys, You got
That's
me. You buy literal Fat Boys for the freezer. That's like an ice cream thing.
I
You're
know.
in Church Gear warehouse.
Those Fat Boy sandwiches, man, those things are good.
Yeah, and you love to take a bite out of them. You don't take a bite out of me, thankfully.
Yeah.
You'd get sepsis. But what people should take a bite out of is this episode. So send it to a friend. What are you laughing at, Toby?
This is the dumbest ending ever, so I love it. So keep
Are
going.
we cutting?
No. Heck
Okay.
no.
So if you want to give your friend sepsis, text them this episode and say, hey, you should listen to this, and just stop before they talk about it at the end.
Yeah, tuck.
I'm acting like it's Friday. All right, see ya.